Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar, where we will discuss Cipher classifiers and how they allow you to get your view of the technology space. We have a fantastic round today. We have Nigel Schweitzer, who is the CEO and one of the co-founders of Cipher, formerly an IP lawyer with over 25 years of experience and recognized by IAM as a leader in IP strategy. We have James Watson, Commercial Manager for EMEA for Cipher. James works with the majority of Cipher's European and Asian clients with an interest in supporting strategic IP and R&D teams. We have Sebastian Müller-Borges, Head of Cipher Certified. Sebastian has been with Cipher for over 7 years and focuses on the training program to teach clients how to hands-on build their own classifiers. And finally, you have me, your host. My name is William Mansfield. I head the consulting and customer success team for LexisNexis IP. I and the customer success team work very closely with our clients to make sure we're able to help them realize their goals with our products. That is our round today. Over the next hour, we will look at why patent classification is an important tool, how patent classification actually works, how Cipher customers are using classifiers today, and what the future looks like with classification inside PatentSite. Then finally, we'll have a Q&A to answer any questions you might have. Speaking of which, if you have any questions, you'll find a Q&A button in the webinar interface. Please use this to submit those questions. And we will have Q&A session at the end where we will answer as many of these as we can. And if we're unable to answer your question today, we will follow up afterwards along with a recording of the session. So I am really excited about Cipher and PatentSite coming together. Cipher is enabling really powerful AI technology classification, and PatentSite, in combination with this, with its highly flexible patent analytics, where we can really deep dive into any space that we choose. I mean, PatentSite, our core value, our core deliverable to our clients is business-focused analytics. And we have always brought the search, the technology space in from our customers to bring their view in and integrate it into those analytics. And so we are so excited to have Cipher to be able to allow and enable our customers to define their own technology space and leverage the best of both tools. So without more ado, I will hand over to Nigel to get us rolling. Nigel?
Thanks, Will. First of all, I just want to say how delighted the Cipher team, how me personally, is to be part of the LexisNexis Intellectual Property Solutions family. The strategy, the mission of LNIP to acquire IPlytics, to acquire Cipher, to bring them together into PatentSite will create a world-beating solution. Today's webinar is, of course, focused on patent classification, which is what this webinar is focused on and how it will benefits PatentSite customers. So let's just take a step back. Now, you see a webinar title called Machine Learning and Classification, and you think we're going to speak to you about technology, but we're not. We're going to speak to you about solving problems. You live in a complex technology world where patent data is not kind. There are a lot of patents that are not written to be easily searched. You're getting more demand from the business and less budget, or at least stable budgets. And that looks like it's going to be the position for a little while. So if you need to do more with the same, then automation and efficiency is absolutely critical. For this webinar, is all about automation and efficiency to solve your strategic problems. So let's look at classification. Classification is taking messy data and making it more readily understandable by humans. None of this AI is taking your jobs. It's not that. It is AI providing a level of automation in relation to those tedious tasks that really you shouldn't be doing as a human. We say on our website that life is too short to be counting and sorting patents manually. And I mean it. My background as 25 years as a lawyer was watching people in data rooms reading patents and writing notes. AI and machine learning are capable of simplifying those tasks, of moving from the left-hand side of the screen, where there's 50 million patent families or 100 million patent documents, and using training data, about which Sebastian will talk a lot, using training data to create classifiers that will remove noise, that will end up with your technologies, your patent to technology mapping with clean, accurate data. A word about strategic patent intelligence. We'll mention the word strategy at the beginning, and you'll hear that over and over again. Cipher's solutions are in this area, in benchmarking, in competitive intelligence, in risk mitigation relating to NPEs and assertion, in relation to value creation, like monetization or cross-licensing. It's not an operational tool. Cipher isn't working in a realm where it's helping you do freedom to operate or helping you file an individual patent. And I think it's that strength which defines the patent site and the Cipher mission of helping you maximize value and minimize risk in your portfolio. Before we get on to the detail, I do have a slide which talks about our loyal customers in both Europe and the United States. It was also my great pleasure to join the Patent Site Summit of over 1,000 people in Japan on the 7th of June to go and launch Cipher into Asia. What this slide is really talking about is the breadth of Cipher classification capabilities. There's lots of discussion about whether you can trust ML. And these logos, these sectors on the left, automotive, semiconductor technology, shows that classification is not a boutique, a niche application, but it's one that can apply to all of your patent portfolios. So enough about talking about the dream of classification. I'd like to hand over to Seb to talk about Cipher classifiers.
Thank you, Nigel. Well, when I talk about how classifiers work, I want to talk about three things really. One, a high-level view of the process of building classifiers. Then I want to give you an insight into what it looks like building those classifiers, what the user interface looks like. And then finally, I want to talk about the output, or what are the benefits and what is it that we get when we build classifiers. So let's start off with the first one. The process of building classifiers on a high level can really be broken down into these 4 steps. The first one is building up an initial training set. As the user, as the classifier builder, I start with a small number of positives and negatives, and I'll add them into the training set. Now, let me explain the terminology, because I know we use quite a bit of terminology when we go into detail here. Positives really refer to positive relevant patent examples that correspond to the technology that we have defined. Negatives, on the other hand, are patents that are unrelated. They are outside of the scope of what we're looking for. And then the training set is really a list of patents, positives and negatives, that we build up to train the machine learning engine to understand what we're looking for, to draw the boundaries around what is relevant and what is not. The second step, after we give that initial training set into the classifier then provides patents back to us. Each patent family gets a relevant score. The scores go from 1 to 0. Right in the middle, you have a cutoff point. Everything above 0.5 is considered a relevant patent. Everything below considered unrelated. Now here, it's a really important step where we get this list of results and feedback that we as a user, as a classifier builder, can then review. And then in the third step, we can refine on this. We can add them to the positives if those are patterns that are scored very low and we thought we missed them. We add them to the training set. The same thing if we find noise in the results, higher scoring patterns, we add them as negatives. And through this iteration between getting feedback from the system and as the builder being able to refine and improve those results, we iterate until we have a well-performing classifier. Now let's jump into what the system looks like. So on screen now, you see our user interface. This is really where, as the builder, as the architect of the classifier, we can define all the steps. I'll go into the details of these features in a second, but for now, I want to introduce you to this. So on the left-hand side, you see the navigation that shows up all the features that guide you through the classifier building process. On the top, you see the text search. It allows for Boolean searching to identify and add examples of patterns to the training set, both positives and negatives. On the left-hand side, you see two further features, two really smart features, suggestions and similar families that analyze the data either in the patterns or the training set to provide more patterns, to diversify and improve the training set. Below that, you see evaluate. That's a feature to test the performance of the classifier, to further refine and improve the classifier before this is rolled out. On the right-hand side, you see the red and green boxes. These are the pattern families that you will see while you go through these different features. You see highlighting that makes it really convenient and easy to read patterns. It's quite intuitive and helps to quickly understand if patterns are positives and negatives. You see scores. As I mentioned earlier, each pattern family gets assigned a score, and this really helps you to make sense of what the classifier currently thinks of these patterns, if these are considered relevant or not, and you can then refine and improve the classifier on that. And of course, the functionality of marking these pattern families as positives and negatives. Now, when we start building classifiers, we start from setting the scope. As the builder, again, we have full control over what is included and excluded. And this side really functions as a North Star to note down, to document, and to break down what we're capturing. Again, we have the highlighting feature on the right-hand side. You have further build notes below to really give you a page where you can organize, structure your thoughts while you're building the classifier. And the classifier process, I'll talk about this later, it's really explorative. So you will be confronted with new concepts and new terminology, and this is a great place to document all of it. Initial Boolean searching, I refer to this as the starting point to build up our training set. We can here create some Boolean search strings and then get all of the results sorted by score. So understanding what the classifier is capturing and what it's missing is really key to this step. We can find and cover certain concepts that we want to find in the results, and we can see all the other patterns that read onto or are either excluded from the process. It's really handy and helps you to build up your training set. When we go into similar families, one of the other features of those smart features, this really allows us to take either pattern families or a text excerpt, a paragraph from either other pattern documents or from other non-patent literature that you have that really describes the technology that you're looking for. You can input them here and let the machine explore patterns that are related to these. It's really building on what machines do best, which is crunch the numbers, connecting the dots, and then suggesting pattern lists to you, where you can then add those to the training set. The whole process is really guiding you through building up and diversifying the training set. And this is a particular feature that helps you in doing that. Suggestions. Probably my favorite feature of the lot is a feature that takes your existing training set and expands on it. It looks for connections through CPCs or through citations or through the text and gives you patterns from different score ranges to test you, really to question the builder. Is this something you want to explore, include or exclude, to make sure that you're covering blind spots? This is a feature where I, a lot of times, find new terminology, new application areas that either I didn't consider or I wasn't aware of, and I want to add to the training set or remove. Finally, evaluation. Now, really, the goal so far was building up that training set, improving the performance. This is to make sure to test the classifier against different sets of patterns. In this example, you see Google and Amazon. And here, the classifier was run against these portfolios to make sure that we're capturing all the pattern families that are relevant, but also to be able to look below that cutoff point and be sure in our results that we're not missing any examples that should be within the result sets. So this is a really crucial feature to make sure that we're capturing everything we should be capturing, but also that we're not including too much noise in our results. Throughout the process, there's full transparency. So either in the training set where you can see everything you've marked as positive and negative, you can review this and correct it if you've made mistakes, to the result sets as well. We always see all results either positive or negative, and we can review by this, and we can make sure again that we're not missing anything or that we're not capturing too much noise. And let's talk about, well, what do we get out of this, right? I've shown you, I hope I've given you a glance at what the building process and what the user interface does when you're building a classifier. But really, there's four key benefits that I've pointed out here. One is this collaborative approach between human and machine learning. It's super powerful. The human provides context and direction, while the machine learning does all the heavy calculations and connects the data points to identify patterns that are really hard to identify for humans because we don't have those capabilities of thinking about 10 different connections at one point in time. There's a lot of smart features in the system. We've built classifiers and we've developed and improved the process over many years. And we have implemented a lot of these features that help build better, more diverse training sets so that these are as representative as possible, and therefore the results that are created are as accurate as possible. It's not just about the technology, but it's also about making sure that the training set we create is a high quality training set. Full transparency, this, as I said, allows the user to review all patterns by relevance and not just the ones that hit the mark. So you can always make sure that you're not missing out on results. Finally, full control. Classifier Builder gives you full control over what is included and excluded. We don't just want you to take our word for it, and therefore we're really proud of the fact that we tested the system independently by a third party. How we did this is that we took the test data set that was generated by that, again, independent third party. Cipher's classifiers were trained on a portion of that data, and the accuracy was tested against the remainder. The results were very clear. Classifiers achieved about a 96% accuracy rate, and that is something that really reinforces this approach and the strength of this approach. Finally, I want to talk about how you can get access to classifiers. Well, there's really two options here. The first one is Core Cipher, where we can build classifiers for you. Client-defined classifiers are built in collaboration and in dialogue to make sure that the team that builds these classifiers really fully understands what you want to include and exclude in the different classifiers. The second route is Cipher certified. You get access to the Classifier Builder user interface and the training program. training program and support, make sure that you build the in-house capabilities to create classifiers yourself. And with that, I want to hand over to Jay.
Thanks, Bastian. So as a part of the commercial team at Cipher, my entire role here is to understand our clients' problems and ideally find a solution that we can implement. But I would argue the most exciting part of the role is later on. It's when we actually see the impact over time and how these classifiers have been used to the company's benefit. I'd say that it would be almost impossible to define one single problem that everyone has. Every prospect that we speak to has very unique issues. But if you were to find a common theme with everyone, it would be that they just don't have enough time. They want to do the strategic value add analysis that we're talking about here, but they often run out of time and find themselves doing the operational day-to-day work. FTO and invention disclosure is business critical. And a symptom of this is that over time, that is just what the company sees them as. IP helps me file a patent. That's pretty much it. So how can classifiers help that? Well, as you're probably gathering throughout the whole webinar, our workflows are all focused more on communication, understanding why you have a portfolio, what other people are doing, and how that might impact the company. The benefit of classification is that once it's set up, it requires no incremental time to use it for reporting. So if you have a busy technology area or an important question from the company, once you've set it up, it'll just work throughout time. And I think when we look at the general themes of the audience members, this is quite an interesting how the delivery is very different. So when you're looking at a general counsel or head of IP, they want to do the form of delivery that C-suite want to see, which is you've got a few slides, you've got 5 minutes, give me an overview of what you're doing, how the portfolio is developed, and what the state of the market is. Tell me why we're spending money with you and justify it, really. Now, heads of IP want to use that type of data, but anyone can have pretty charts. Unless they trust underlying what it's saying, then they won't present it. And that's what Cipher is here to do. We can give you a broader view, but at least you'll know that 90% of the information in there is relevant. When you talk about strategic IP teams, portfolio managers, it's not just Cipher involved. There's a myriad of tools that these groups will use. And Cipher's most important role here is they want to effectively look into the detailed technology analysis of their portfolio, and they also want to understand how their portfolio fits within the patent ecosystem of the company. If I know my legacy areas, how do I decide where to prune? If I want to sense check that others are abandoning certain areas, can I save capital to invest in the rest of the portfolio? And if they look into new areas, how do I advise the R&D teams and innovation groups about what's happening, who the competition are, where the risks and opportunities are? With everything that we're talking about here, it's not that they don't have information in their head. They have decades of experience in most instances, but they need to sense check that with objective data so they can communicate what they're trying to say. And I think just finally, one of my favorite groups actually that we work with are these indirect users of patent insights. So business development teams, market strategy, innovation, R&D. You do not know who could benefit from patent data in companies that we work with, but you need to advertise yourself effectively. And we've had some really good success recently with clients who've set up, a weekly or monthly newsletter. It's not their monitoring process. It's not highlighting a single patent. What it's doing is saying, hey, look, here are some insights each month on our competitors and our technologies that are interesting to the company. So now you know that we don't just file patents. We do have the ability to access other information. And the day that one of those individuals has a question and they want to bring it to you, they know they can. And that's kind of this whole evolution when we talk about removing IP as just a cost center and actually making it a useful strategic part of the business. Now, I've talked about very abstract broad cases. I will just go into 2 examples. So exploration is something we do a lot of at Cipher. You don't have to answer every question with our machine, but we're very good when it's a new area that you need to look at. We had a pharmaceutical group join us last year who understood their core technologies perfectly. They didn't need Cipher to replace that, and it wasn't appropriate to do so at the time. But when it came to digital disruption, they just didn't know where to start. Companies will always come to us and say, hey, tell me about AI or sustainability, and that's just such a broad question, it's difficult to get a good answer. Now, they realized very quickly that unlike searching, you don't need to know a perfect starting point. With classifiers, you can use one patent or a bit of text, and over time, you'll find 5 more, 10 more, 20 more, and you'll build an effective understanding of technology. The outcome was, instead of just going to an outsourcer or answering the question incorrectly, they over time built an understanding of these areas, started to define a digital taxonomy, and now had genuine knowledge about the different areas to look into and robust classification to monitor it. It wasn't just that the tool was better, it was that the mindset had shifted and they had started to have a much broader view of how to look into this data. And finally, communication, something that I think Nigel, when he started the company, that was the whole goal of Cipher. We have all this information locked up in our patent team's heads. How can we make sure that the rest of the business understands it? We had a head of IP come to us about 6 months ago. They just joined an automotive startup. And the problem was that they were used to sophisticated processes and knew that in a fast-growing business, they would just end up filing patents, and that would be effectively all they had time to do. They wanted to set up a strategy now and a process that allowed them to track it over time without taking lots of effort. So we built them a taxonomy. Cipher helped them do this because they didn't have any capacity to do it themselves. So we built the technologies for them. And when doing that design, a key important part of it was that we didn't define every technology they could possibly look at. We looked at just the ones that would impact future revenue and that they thought the business cared about. That was done within about 6 weeks. And after that, they could every single quarter set up a framework where the head of IP ran a report. It took about 45 minutes. And after which they could inform the business about what they were doing, how the portfolio was growing, and how it compared to others. The nice thing about this was the goal was just effectively to be able to monitor their own developments and also justify budget easily. But the CEO and the C-suite generally have become incredibly interested, and they now have additional meetings solely focused on competitive intelligence and how patents can inform them about future market opportunities. They managed to develop that strategy and maintain it. And I'll leave it here just by saying that effectively, when you think about the amount of money that people spend on portfolios, it's definitely not insignificant. And I don't think many people would buy a plane if it didn't come with an effective guidance system. Now, that is Cipher's whole world. We don't think that we know more than your expertise. We just hope that we can provide the data to back it up and effectively let you communicate to the company. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much for that overview, everyone. I mean, I've personally had hands-on with Cipher and training from Seb. And not only have I been impressed with the results from Cipher, but also the user experience, the tooling and support, which enables me to refine my own view of the technology space I am defining. And I'm really excited about this future together. So I want to talk shortly about what that future looks like for Cipher and patent sites. So right now, we're working on deploying a connection between Cipher and patent site, which will be available in the next months. This will allow those with a subscription to both products to push the results of classifiers built in Cipher into patent site on a regular basis, having them ready for analysis, ensuring you have consistent and up-to-date technology definitions for you and your whole organization to use in their analysis, just like James was speaking to, right? They are ready and up to date and ready to use. So when you have something on your desk to do, that you can just leverage them. And on top of this, with the full flexibility, just like other, say, custom fields users can create in patent site today, look at it and slice it in any way that you would choose. That's the initial plan. In the midterm, the tooling which allows similar families and such, which Sebastian showed, will also be made available in patent site, and this will be a step towards the final full integration, with all of the functionality shown today being made available directly in patent site, with authorized users being able to seamlessly move between Cipher classification and patent site analytics. And we are really excited about that longer term, but also that initial term integration that allows us to leverage the best of both tools already today. So thanks for everyone for the discussion, going through some of the slides and understanding Cipher. We want to go to a Q&A to cover the questions that are coming in from the audience. Just as a a reminder, if anyone has questions as we're talking through, please use the Q&A feature in the webinar interface to submit questions. And we'll try to cover all of them that are there, but we'll, like I mentioned, follow up afterwards with recording and any questions that we weren't able to get to. So let's start off with, maybe with addressing Nigel first. And there's a question on how do we know machine learning classification is accurate? Nigel, is that a question you're able to field for us?
Yeah, sure. And I think trust is one of the key blockers for the adoption of machine learning and AI in IP departments. At least it was 10 years ago. I think if you look, these adoption cycles were well past the early adopters, and it's now mainstream. I don't know whether ChatGPT gave it a surge or not, but trust is critical. Seb referred to the article and the training data, the gold standard article. That's available for download. We can put it in the channel, or we can go and make that available to anyone on request. It is available in the Reader Elsevier journal, but I'm not quite sure the science gets you there. What Seb was talking about was testing the accuracy of the algorithm, but that's not the same as testing the accuracy of a classifier. A classifier is a training set put into the algorithm. And that's why we spent so long of today's webinar talking about the process and the fact that if you're a Cipher certified user, you get full support. And Will, thanks for that shout out. I mean, you at PatentSite are relatively new, but LexisNexis did do about a year of due diligence on all the ML solutions in the market before you chose Cipher. So part of the pride we have is not only do our clients like it, not only did LexisNexis like it, but the real test. And we have an expression in England, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You get to build classifiers. During the evaluation, you get to see the system. You get to enjoy the speed, the efficiency, the automation. So when I say don't just trust, try.
Cheers, Nigel. There's a question which asks about some examples of the training sets that you typically see used, and the size and say the resultant, say, precision or recall of that. Sebastian, maybe that's something you can field for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about that. So as with these systems, it really depends on the technology, how small or big a training set is. You can have a very narrow, very well-defined technology and build a smaller training set, or you try to capture a really complex, broad range of technologies. And all of that is possible, but it of course changes the nature of the training sets. On average, we find that we build training sets that have around 100 to 150 positives and negatives. We balance them somewhat. But those can, of course, go up and down based on again, the complexity of the technologies. I think when it comes to precision and recall or accuracy, when we build classifiers, we use those numbers, and we have features that support you getting access to those numbers through either the training set or test sets that you build. We want to build them upwards of 85 or 90%. And then what we do is we review those results. Really, use cases can differ. And sometimes you want to spend extra time to increase the accuracy of a classifier. Sometimes you say 90% is good for what I'm trying to achieve. And we're realistic about that. We know that we live in a world of limited time, and you have to have the right balance between the time and the cost, the time you put in, and the benefits you get from that.
Seb, without wanting to jump in, there's another question lower down which talks about how long does it take to build a classifier. Do you want to just complete the loop on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it differs from classifier to classifier, narrower or broader. We, on average, say between 4 to 6 hours. Of course, the first classifier that you'll build will take a bit longer. But as you get used to the system, you will start, and we give all the guidance, right? Our training program is focused around helping you to build good classifiers in an efficient manner. So as you get used to it, we usually say about 4 to 6 hours.
Cheers, Seb. Cheers, Nigel. There are a couple of questions on, if Cipher classifiers are an extra feature, is it an add-on, or what the cost is, or things like this in the chat. And James, could you field these for us?
Yep, thanks, Will. So I suppose until that timeline is fulfilled, as Will was suggesting, of full integration, Cipher will effectively be an additional tool or subscription that you can add on to your patent site access, which, as Will has already mentioned, will be able to be accessed. The data will be accessed in the patent site within the next few months. If in the future you want to combine both tools, then we can do an amendment to add it on as an additional feature. The costing is one of those things where how long is a piece of string? We will be giving all patent site users the ability to access this for a discounted price, but that will be something which we discuss over the next couple of weeks, and something we wouldn't be releasing details on just now.
Cheers, James. There's a question on how does classification go about meeting the bigger Cipher vision that you mentioned? So future trends or risk management or such. Nigel, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the questions in here is Cipher ready and available? Remember, Cipher is a 10-year-old product. While we're only formally inside the LNIP organization since the end of March, all these solutions have been completely road tested and developed. So if it's risk management, Cipher totally understands litigation risk and has sort of seminal papers on portfolio optimization. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but there are detailed Cipher papers available for download from our website. Go to cipher.ai. There's also material on the LexisNexis website, or contact any of the speakers today and we can give you more information on any of the solutions which I described on one of the very early slides.
Cheers. There is a question about multi-classification. So when you have, say, multiple sets that you want to build up, or say subcomponents of sets that you want to classify. Sebastian, maybe something that you can cover, how that works?
Yeah, I can certainly speak to that. We don't do multi-class classification, we do binary classification. So that is, you build one classifier and you either determine the pattern is relevant or not. How we deal with tagging multiple assets up is by building a taxonomy of classifiers. So you build a list that you can organize in whichever manner you want to cover those different technologies. Of course, we have workflows and we have features and tools that help you build those in parallel. So you can feed patterns from one end to the other. You can take training sets that are positive in one set and add them as negatives to the other set. So there's a lot of features and workflows where we help you build out your taxonomy. But as the technology is, we do that binary classification and not multi-class classification. Maybe Nigel, anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I was going to only add one point. I didn't know whether the questioner was referring to our universal technology taxonomy. We've become somewhat famous for having created the first business usable taxonomy of 122 classes in 8 superclasses, which puts all of the world's patents into one of those 122 buckets. When I say more information available on request, this isn't about the UTT, but if anyone wants more information about that, again, it's available from our website or available on request. And that is a multi-class, and a multi-class is defined as effectively one classifier that has 122 answers, as opposed to everything else in this webinar, which Seb has, which is every question has one answer, yes or no. Now, the only other thing I'd add is a lot of the questions are coming up about taxonomies. And I don't know whether, Seb, you want to talk about why it might look like a multi-class when a set of classifiers are put into a structured taxonomy at level 1, 2, and 3. Would you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So once we build our taxonomies, we have effectively the ability to tag any list of patterns up according to each of these classifiers. So when you create the output from your taxonomy or from any list of classifiers that you have, then you get reports that show you the breakdown of patterns, either per portfolio or in either way you want to do it, into each of these classes. It's a really powerful overview of seeing how certain portfolios break down into classes or classifiers that you defined in one view, and then being able to switch between by technology or by organization gives you a lot of freedom to analyze the pattern landscape or the organization report in ways that are meaningful to you.
Cheers, Seb. Cheers, Nigel. Yeah, I think that was really good answer to that question, also including the taxonomy there. So there are a couple of questions in the chat also about, you know, if they want to test this technology. I mean, how do they go about doing so? James, is that something you can cover for us?
Yeah, so something we've done quite a bit
You're on
over
mute,
the last 10 years. Can you not hear my audio?
We can hear you, James. It's fine.
Okay, sorry. So something we do quite a lot. There's kind of two flavors to everything. We can do a free trial where we'll effectively give you a couple of hours and a detailed walkthrough of what Cipher is, let you see behind the hood and effectively try and work on an example with you. It won't give you the full experience of quality testing. Are these classifiers right for me? But it'll show you a lot more about what we do as a company. And we can do the exact same process with pre-built classification, let you play with it for a couple of weeks and give you access. We also have a process we've run for ages where we do projects with clients where they can pick one or two super interesting technologies for the business. We will do that process with you. And if at the end of the process you are happy with what you receive, we discount that amount from your first year subscription. So we can test it in a light way with you for free, or we can also go into a much more detailed analysis over time on a project.
Cheers, James. There's a couple of questions on the scope of the database. Is it only patent data? Are there other things in there? I don't know, Nigel, you want to speak to that, or Seb?
Well, certainly one of the questions is what's the underlying data in Cipher, and that is IFI claims. And one of the questions asks, will it be all harmonized under patent site? And I don't know whether, Will, you want to take that part.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, obviously, that is the longer term goal. When we talk about the mid and the long term, that is certainly the case, that it will be all on top of the Lexis patent database that we have. Obviously, that first instance, that integration, it is moving data results from one to the other to be ready for use, and that will be on top of the existing databases that the separate tools use. But that mid and that long term, that will be all built on top of the same Lexis database, basically.
But it is true, Will, that as we go through integration and harmonization, there will be movement from Cipher data sets. So Cipher has litigation data, which funnily enough, we licensed from LexisNexis before the acquisition. So that continues. We have NPE data, we have cost data, and each data set enhances one aspect of the workflow. So litigation data is critical to our risk workflows, cost data is critical to our budget workflows. But as I say, the expectation should be that all the benefits of Cipher will be made available to existing patent site customers. If it's pre-full integration, then of course Cipher is a fully built product. If it's post-integration, then it's of course one-stop shopping.
Cheers. There's also a question which asks about the kind of some of the features in patent site today, like the sunburst chart or the SDG mapping or such, that are features that are there that are some kind of technology group. And maybe I can start a point here, and any of you feel free to finish it. But I think the biggest difference there are those are definitions that we have created, right? Like the UTT that Nigel mentioned in Cipher as well, which is a great tool. These are great tools for understanding or starting to build an understanding for an area, but they are inevitably someone else's definition, right? How I choose or how research from us chooses to define, say, a technology field will be different from maybe the way that you might. And I think the biggest difference here is then with Cipher classification, you are getting your definition of those fields, the way you and your business understands that, rather than the kind of global or kind of view that's going to satisfy as many people as possible, but won't be personalized to you. I don't know if any of you want to reiterate the importance of that aspect.
I'll say one thing in defense of SDG mapping and universal technology taxonomy, because both of them address one of James's points head on, is how do you make patent data accessible to non-patent people? Well, you talk about sustainability. You bring an end to greenwashing. And I know there's a major initiative, which I won't steal the thunder of, by Patent Site in relation to its SDG mapping. UTT has enabled financial services companies to understand at the click of a button what patented technologies, what are the innovation trends within every company in the world. And you don't necessarily want to build a custom taxonomy, but I don't know who wants to go out of James and Seb out of why are custom taxonomies so beautiful?
Well, I mean, I think we've
You're
tried
on
it.
mute, James.
I don't know. It should be coming through. But yeah, I think we've tried it, right? We've done this in the past. We've built lots of industry standard taxonomies, and while they've been loved by some, the common theme that has always come back is, I want my view of the world. And I think that's what we've always said, CPC, keywords, whatever. They just don't do that. They have such a broader meaning. And when we focus on the application or the definition, it's all about that. I think if Seb has anything to add, I'll leave it with just the way I see the marrying of Patent Site and Cipher is customization for your view of classification. Patent Site is customization of the way you want to display the data. It's pretty perfect when you think about both. They're just getting your view of the world.
Cheers. So maybe to some degree building on that, what about building classifiers for maybe areas that you are maybe less well versed in, building technology in areas of technology which maybe aren't your expertise or maybe are on the edge of that? Seb, is that something you could speak to?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So classifiers help you explore the space, right? It goes from being one directional and you just see what you know and what you determine in your Boolean queries or your search criteria. It goes from that to being more of a collaborative approach. I said that earlier. I'll say that again now. It's with the interaction, the collaboration between the classifier builder and the person who's building that classifier is really powerful, and it helps you explore a space. Of course, you need expertise in the area, but expanding on your knowledge is certainly possible with classifiers. I want to add also that we talked about full classifier building. We have other workflows that are more tailored towards exploration. They take less time involvement. You build smaller training sets and you get directional intelligence, and you get patterns that match that using slightly slightly tweaked engine that powers classifiers. And that's also really powerful. It gives you some insights into a new technology space. If you know very little, it helps you inform your view on that.
Cheers. So there is also a question on if people are using Boolean searches today and happy with the results that they're getting for that. I mean, why should they? What is the benefit they're going to get here? rather than of what they're using today, basically. James, you want to cover this?
Yeah, and I think this will probably come to the budget justification side as well, right? So I don't think I've ever started a process where we have gone into it and said, okay, take your whole monitoring taxonomy, whatever you've got internally, and just shift to Cipher tomorrow. The goal is to, I guess, if you are going to change your process and do it with us, do it over time. Start with the areas that are either new. So if you're going to start a new process and you're using Cipher, maybe set it up through us, because it'll obviously have some particularly interesting efficiency gains over time. But it's not for everything, right? We have so many people come to us and say, I have 300 categories internally. We're monitoring 300 categories. And do I need to put that in Cipher? And I don't get much noise in some of these results. Well, no. I mean, the reality is we have some people go from 300 in their internal taxonomy to 40 in Cipher because they are using this where it's appropriate. Where do you have a big data challenge? Where are you repeating the analysis consistently? Where is there benefit in time and cost to it? So I would say if you've got something going really well, it's probably going to be a hard thing for us to shift if you don't see the benefit. But I haven't seen many companies so far where a few areas or a different business unit doesn't have this challenge. So hopefully that makes sense. We won't force it on you if it can't help you, but I would argue it can probably help most people in some areas.
I might add a little bit to this, and I really loved your answer, James. So that was really good. I like to think of Boolean search as another tool, right? Classification is one tool. There's a range of tools that you have available to you as a patent professional. We're not trying to be, or we're not trying to say that Cipher or classifiers are the only tool that you should be using. We're saying that, as James just said so eloquently, there is a time and place, and we don't want you to replace all, but there is instances where you gain efficiency, where you improve your results, where you have certain challenges that can't be met with current tools, and then classifiers do help solve those problems.
I've got nothing to add there, but there's a question right at the end, Will, and I know I'm doubling up as moderator here, so I apologize, because I meant to just be a passive, but there's one here saying, how do you build very broad classifiers, like classifiers in relation to televisions, where televisions include multiple technologies like display and sound, and is that trivial? Clearly it's non-trivial, but a quick shout out for a collaboration we had with Allied Security Trust, where we built a taxonomy called N/D, powered by AST. You can see I wasn't a branding expert, but N/D is about calculating the world's numerator and denominator in some very broad technology areas. And it's for taxonomy. The AST taxonomy is the one used for buying patents on the secondary market. If anyone wants to see what broad classifiers look like, then I would encourage you to speak to the Cipher team about looking at the AST taxonomy. So I think the fun thing about Cipher, Will, is the increased set of capabilities that your customers can explore. Of course, this is about promoting custom taxonomies, classifiers, Cipher certified, but Cipher has done some really interesting work in multi-class. It's done some really interesting work in broad secondary market classifiers like AST. Come and speak to us and have a look. There's a new set of capabilities. Self-evidently, LexisNexis wouldn't have acquired Cipher unless we were bringing something new to the party, and we're proud to be able to do that.
So yeah, maybe one more question. I mean, there's a question on checking false results as well, and certainly I think that's something that, you know, as I and team also used Cipher, was a question of are we going in the right direction with this and how we can detect that. I think that's a challenge for the building of any search, whether using classification or not. But Seb, maybe you can talk about specifically in Cipher how you check those kind of results.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the multiple ways, again, in those evaluation reports and the different features that we have for you to zero in on a particular set of patterns and then review the scores, review them both in the relevant scoring ones and the ones that fall outside of those positive scores. So the ones that the system thinks are negative. You can dive into this, review them, and identify patterns that you're missing. So Cipher and the Classifier Builder gives you the ability to really look for those, uncover those areas, and is quite transparent about then allowing you to add those to the training set and improve on the classifier to mitigate those zones. So it is a process. It is part of building a classifier to make sure that you review the patterns that are falling outside of the relevant results, so you can make sure and you can be secure in the results, and maybe know that you're not missing major fields that you want to include.
Cheers. So I think that's all the time we have for questions. I mean, unless any of the rounds see something they particularly want to speak to, please do shout. But and there's loads of engagement in the Q&A, so I really appreciate everyone's questions and the answers from the round. Sorry to everyone who we weren't able to answer live, but like I mentioned, we will make sure we go back to everyone that we can with answers to those questions, and the recording and such. But before we go, I want to give the round an opportunity to leave some final thoughts, some key takeaways. Seb, you wanna kick us off? What would you say is your key takeaway from today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna double down on the collaborative aspect of building classifiers. I know with ChatGPT and other AI and machine learning solutions coming up, there's a lot of nervousness about replacing the humans working. I think the supervision, the supervised machine learning classifiers really showcase that there's a room for humans where they do what they do best. It's providing guidance, making sure that you're capturing the right results. Similar to the last question, it's like, how do we make sure that classifier is capturing everything? It is the human's ability to then guide the system to make the right calls and define the scopes in that collaborative work between machine learning algorithm and the classifier builder. It's also, the results are one thing, the process is incredibly rewarding and explorative and enhances the ability of the human to find all relevant patterns. And therefore, I want to focus on this being a really collaborative workflow that is quite powerful.
Cheers. James, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I basically just think that, you know, from a technology perspective, we've gone from the horse to the car. So why would we want to travel the same distance and use the same roads? I think that Cipher isn't just an opportunity to use a new tool and do the same thing quicker. Of course, we're going to maintain some of these workflows because lots of them are great, but it's also an opportunity to evolve your thinking and try asking new questions. I think that we spend a lot of time in year one just showing what the art of the possible is, because there's a bunch of different stuff that you can do now that you can manipulate data in this way. And I think it's just good to keep that hat on when trying out some of these new systems and processes.
Thanks. And Nigel, your final thoughts? I think you're muted, Nigel.
There you go. After telling everyone, thank you. No, probably the same point as I came in on, that life is too short to be counting and sorting patterns manually. Harness the efficiency that these new technologies that machine learning can bring. And thank you to LexisNexis for having the confidence to choose Cipher. And we are genuinely excited about bringing this potential to PatternSight.
Cheers, Nigel. I mean, maybe from my side as well, if I reflect on my experience with PatternSight, with LexisNexis IP, I think we've always avoided defining searches ourselves. You know, the core value of PatternSight has always been enabling people with pattern analytics to solve business problems. We always brought in the definition from our customers, being the experts. And so I think we're so excited at LexisNexis IP to have Cipher join us, bringing your core value as this best-in-class technology classification to complement these analytics. So I'm personally really, really excited about this. So thanks everyone. Thanks to our guests. Thanks for the discussion in the Q&A. Thanks for everyone for listening. And yeah, have a super day, everyone. Bye.
Bye now.